Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. And welcome to another episode of Roll the Dice with Dave. Want to welcome everybody that is out there on Facebook, also everybody that's out there on YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have a great show in store for you tonight. It's something tied to culture. And the topic was brought to me by a student who was in one of my classes. And I'm so excited that she wants to talk a little bit more about the topic. And let's explore this a little bit deeper. Going to be talking about dark tourism tonight. If you don't know what it is or what it's about, hopefully we'll be able to give you a little insight. We're also going to be talking about the show Dark Tourism. And while you're out there checking out the show, please go ahead and give a like. Don't forget to share with your friends. Roll the Dice with Dave. We were talking about a lot of different topics from a lot of different viewpoints. So I'm excited to have her on. Let me go ahead and get Alie back into the screen. This is Alie right here. Alie, I am so excited to have you on the show. And like I said, you had reached out to me and said, hey, I want to be a guest on Roll the Dice with Dave, and I want to go ahead and talk about dark tourism. So Alie had reached out to me. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, if you're interested in having a platform to talk about a certain topic, please go ahead and reach out. We'd love to have you on. You can either comment or go ahead and email me at rollthedicewithdave@gmail.com. So tonight, as I mentioned, we are going to be talking about dark tourism. But before I get into any of the aspects tied into dark tourism, Alie, do you mind just go ahead and giving a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. So my name is Alie. I'm a tourism and hospitality management major at Flagler College. And I have like an interest in dark tourism, the kind of like the darker side of the popular tourism today.
Cool. And also ask you if you don't mind telling everybody where you're from and what's your favorite football team.
I'm from Kansas City, Missouri, so that means I'm a big Kansas City Chiefs fan, and I love Patrick Mahomes.
And that's why I asked you, because I graduated from Texas Tech, had the opportunity to watch Pat Mahomes actually play when I was back at Texas Tech, also worked there for a few years. And it's great to see him doing big things in the NFL. It's exciting. So that's why I wanted you to go ahead and introduce where you're from, talk a little about Pat Mahomes. Hopefully we'll get a chance to watch some football this year. Hopefully my sons will get a chance to play a little football this year. And everybody out there that has a son or daughter that is going to school, I wish them all the best. So going on to our first little topic of discussion, do you mind telling me in your own words what you think exactly dark tourism is?
Dark tourism is kind of the darker, unknown, unpopularized form of tourism. It ranges from like visiting graves to visiting ghosts to visiting like haunted like penitentiaries even.
All right. So honestly, a lot of things we have here in St. Augustine, Florida.
Yeah.
So one of the things, just to pull it up, because you touched on the aspect there. So I found a pretty simple definition. The idea of dark tourism defined as tourism involving travel to places historically associated with death and tragedy. Most recently, it has been suggested that it should include the reason people go to these tourist attractions. So it's really starting to expand into the idea of not just going to places where there's tragedy, but even looking into the idea of why do people go? So we do have a couple of people that have commented. One is a good buddy of mine from high school, Lou Rivera, also known as Barbecue Lou, wishing everybody a good evening. Hey, man, good evening to you. You too. It's good to see you on there. My man, Jacob Hambrick from Texas Tech. And he said, great job. I appreciate it. He said he's here for any of the questions. So hopefully people will comment as we do get to the aspect of the questions. So we're about to hit a little Q&A with you, Alie, before we get into certain aspects related to dark tourism. And I typed up some questions that I wanted to ask you. So what do you think is the main reason people travel to some of these places to experience dark tourism?
For me, it's all about the history that these like places have and the richness of it not being touched. So it's pretty much like untouched history that we learn in history classes.
All right. So your reason is you want to go see kind of the raw aspect, the untouched aspect
Mm.
um, of what's going on from a dark tourism aspect. So another little question or little note that I have down here is: have you ever visited any dark tourism destinations? And if you have, could you please tell me which ones you visited and what you liked most about visiting those destinations?
Um, Honestly, it's local too. It's the medieval torture device collection here on
Okay, that's right. We do have the Medieval Torture Museum here in St. Augustine.
It's really interesting. It's different. I really liked how everything's real and like preserved and unfiltered, pretty much.
Okay, so the unfiltered, yeah, that I have yet to go in there. And some of our advisory board members are like, "Hey, man, you should go check it out. You know, we can get you in." And I still haven't made that jump yet to go into the Medieval Torture Museum. Anybody who's watching the show, if you've ever been to a dark tourism destination, please go ahead in the comments. Let us know where you've been, what kind of impact it had on you. And there's a wide variety of dark tourism destinations as far as what falls in those underneath that umbrella. So if you have, let me know. Here's another question I had for you is if you can visit any dark tourism destination in the world, where would you go and why would you want to go there?
I have two in my head that I really want to go visit, and one is Auschwitz in Europe because I have a lot of friends who are of the Jewish religion, and I just want to go experience what their ancestors went through and just like have a better understanding of what life was like there. And my second one is actually the Suicide Forest in Japan because like I love like my roots being Korean Japanese, so I really
Mhm.
want to visit there as well.
Okay. So my wife actually just put up a little post. She said, yes, the old jail here in St. Augustine now has Old Jail After Dark. I actually went and experienced that. It was pretty interesting. So you are able to basically be a ghost hunter. So you're in there and they give you equipment. You are walking around the old jail. It I tell you what, for me, it was creepy. It was, she did mention that they have caught crawlers in pictures, voices, and apparitions. People are posting these. When I was there, I didn't experience any of that, but there is an aspect of it that a lot of people are very attracted to, and people have caught things on the equipment that they let you use. It really is a great experience. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And it's something I think that St. Augustine has really started to do really, really well from a dark tourism aspect.
Mhm.
You mentioned one place. You had mentioned, I think you had said Auschwitz.
Yeah.
And that is one of the top destinations that people do go with regard to dark tourism. So I found various lists. Um, and so we do have this one. One of my former students from East Carolina University, Amber, put up Chernobyl, and they actually have created a series. I can't remember if it's on HBO, but also Chernobyl is one of the most popular sites as well. So between you, Allie, and Amber, you guys have actually named the top two dark tourism destinations in the world right now. So number one is Auschwitz, that people find to be a place they like to go from the aspect of dark tourism. Number two is Chernobyl, and a lot of people enjoy going to Chernobyl just to see where this tragedy took place. Another one, and you had just mentioned other aspects, and this ties to great tragedy. A lot of people, number three, going to Hiroshima and Nagasaki to see where the bombs were dropped. So that is another big attraction that people have. So Berlin, Germany is number four, and this list is about a year or so old. So I didn't find any that were updated for 2020, but it wouldn't surprise me if these lists are still pretty consistent now. Rwanda is another one. The National 9/11 Monument, and I remember when 9/11 happened. I'm a native New Yorker, but I remember when it happened. I just felt this unquenchable urge to get back to New York to see it. I had to see it for myself. I had to see where this tragedy happened. Many people went out to the site of the plane crash. Many people went out to the Pentagon to see where there was just this draw that was there. Some other places on the list we have. Let's see. Uh, where is it? The wreck of the Titanic in the North Atlantic. So they do take individuals out there. There's a place, Injin, Indonesia, and it's something else. The number of dark tourist places they actually have in this one place in Indonesia. My mom has actually chimed in. She said scary and creepy. It is, but there is this attraction that people do have to it. So one of the other aspects that I wanted to talk to you about is the Netflix series The Dark Tourist. But before I get to that, I have one other question that I wanted to ask you, and it is, why do you think people have this sometimes unquenchable thirst to go to places that there was a lot of suffering? Do you feel it's an exploitation of people suffering when it comes to dark tourism?
I really don't. It honestly depends on the person. For me, it's all about like the richness of the history and learning something new and being able to somehow like feel the pain, quote unquote, of the
Mm-hmm.
people who lived through that and what it must have been like to like live there in a day in their life and just like being able to like take a step back from like your own life problems in a sense and realize that some people have it worse.
Okay, I like your perspective on that. I really like your perspective on that. That's a good one. So now getting to this question, The Dark Tourist. It's a show on Netflix. It's something that both you and I have talked about.
Mm.
I had been watching it. I showed a couple of clippets in our intro to hospitality and tourism class. You had discussed you had an interest in it, and you reached out to me and you said, "Oh, I would love to talk about this on the broadcast." So let me ask you, why do you think people should check out this show?
Honestly, to learn about different people's culture and why things happen in the places that they do and what attracts people to go to tour these places.
Okay, so the attraction there. We have a couple other comments that came in. So here's one. The same reason people love scary movies. They want to feel the fear. I think visiting these places could be a way to learn and not repeat some of the horrible things of our past. I actually like that because I love scary movies. I do love scary movies. But sometimes I'm not going to lie, the scary movies drift into the aspect of being a little bit more comical, sometimes and scary. But yes, I do think the aspect of being in fear makes you feel alive. And Sam, oh, thank you so much for tuning in. Might be a little late, but meant also murder tours in areas have been very popular. And this was actually something you and I had talked about because on the show Dark Tourist, in one of the episodes, they actually do a tour surrounding Jeffrey Dahmer. So it
Yeah,
is
and
it is a big piece of that.
yeah, and also like other figures as well.
Oh, I love it. My wife says she does not like scary movies, but she is very intrigued in visiting scary places. That is a little weird.
I hate
So,
scary movies with a passion.
so you hate scary movies, but you like the idea of the dark tourism visit. So the first episode involved Latin America. If you don't mind just telling us what you thought about this first episode and maybe not giving away too much because we may have some viewers that just haven't checked it out yet. I will say this was probably my favorite episode out of all of them. But if you don't mind just telling us your thoughts a little bit about it, what was your favorite thing about it? What was your least favorite thing? And do you recommend this episode?
As like episode one out of like a new season, it is like a good topic to talk about because it talks about like different cultures, like they mentioned Day of the Dead, which we don't celebrate here in America, and it's kind of like a ritual for them to like honor their dead, And I think that's really cool. And they also talked about different aspects nowadays in 2020 that's still kind of an issue with immigration. So I think it's like a really good episode to watch to realize that people still need to respect their elders who have like passed on and realize how hard it is for immigrants to leave their old home country for then to leave and land here in America for a new start.
Yes. So you do bring up a good point. The whole idea of Dia de los Muertos. It is a big thing to a lot of Latino cultures. And I don't know if me being Latino is why I love this episode so much. But I had mentioned to you the allure of kind of the mythical, legendary status of Pablo Escobar. This one they do a big piece on Pablo Escobar as part of the episode. My mom just jumped in. I love scary movies, but do not like to visit places where they say are haunted. I hope that doesn't stay true with you, Mom, because I would love for you to come down to St. Augustine again and visit me, even though they say St. Augustine is one of the most haunted places. I don't want anything coming home with me. And that is something that they do mention here in St. Augustine. Oh, and also Sierra Burton. Thank you so much for chiming in, Sierra. Glad to see you watching the show. She said, "I love how the show gives insight into other cultures and how they see certain traditions compared to how we see them here in the U.S." Thank you so much for your insight on that. I really appreciate it, and that's touching on exactly what you said. So, would you say, "Hey, this is definitely a thumbs up episode" or a thumbs down episode?
It was a thumbs up episode for me, too, if I may.
Two thumbs up. All right, that's what's up. That is what's up. I love it. My mom says, "Don't think so." So I love that. And my man Murph, thank you so much for joining in. He's like, "Man, white people are all about ghost hunting and stuff." So my man Murph, man, thank you so much for tuning in, brother. And it's funny that you put it that way. You're like, "Man, white people are all about ghost hunting and stuff." You know, in my diversity class, I had a student one time said, "Dr. Rivera, there are just some things that white people do that other cultures don't always want to mess with." And this was one of those things that kind of ties into it. And my man Murph just brought that up. And it's funny how, when you look at a show like this, it does have a white host. But one of the things I found interesting, there were a wide array of individuals that were included in the show, which I thought was pretty cool from that standpoint. Murph, thank you so much for bringing the humor. I appreciate that. Sierra said definitely a thumbs up episode for her. I think, like I said, it was a great one. So now moving into episode two. Episode two focused on Japan. And this one for me was a really interesting episode because actually I'll let you go first and say your thoughts and everything on it, Alie, before I kind of give my little thoughts on it. So Alie, what were your thoughts on this episode?
Honestly, like I loved all these episodes, but like my least favorite one, which we talked about a little earlier, like before this, but it was just really nice to like have them touch on things that Japanese individuals have been going through, especially with like nuclear radiation. Um, the suicide force, for example, is like a big thing because Japanese individuals are put themselves under a lot of pressure in life to be able to support themselves. And I thought it was a really good episode to touch on like how a different culture across the ocean is like completely different in pressure wise and how nuclear radiation can pretty much still affect people to this day pretty much.
Yeah, and you touched on one thing. You talked about the suicide forest, um, and after watching this episode, I'm not gonna lie, that freaked me out so much. Just the idea that there's this forest, and the number of suicides that have taken place in this forest, it really just freaked me out. Just at the thought of it, so much so that I didn't sit there and go, "Oh man, I gotta visit this place just to see what it is." If anything, I have respect for what it is, but the idea of going, I'm not gonna lie, that's not a place on my list of I want to go check out this place. But again, I thought it was a great episode, um, and then also, um, my man is like trying to work his way closer to some of the nuclear fallout areas in that town. That to me was scary. He had the driver trying to get him a little bit closer. They were trying to work with the police to get a little bit closer. It was again, I thought a pretty good episode. So, Alie, your thoughts up or down on this episode? Is it worth the watch? Definitely worth the watch. Okay, that is what's up. So the next one, the United States, episode 3. What are your thoughts on episode 3 in the United States?
I like this episode a lot, especially the one around New Orleans, because again, it's like St. Augustine with how rich the history is. And plus, New Orleans is kind of like a place I want to go visit. So maybe once I'm able to go visit after this whole COVID, I might check everything out that they talked about in the show, because I think it gives good insight that we're among the countries with some of the weirdest but fun dark tourist destinations, if that makes sense.
Hmm. No, and I agree with you there. And I think this is where a lot of people, if they're traditionalists when it comes to dark tourism, some of the things he talked about in this aspect, they may not feel falls into that, such as in New Orleans with the vampire piece. And that's why the thoughts behind the tourists and why they're going. Um, this was probably my least favorite episode. I wouldn't give it a thumbs down, but it's not an enthusiastic double thumbs up. It's kind of a, I
Medium
guess,
in the
yeah,
middle.
you know what I mean? That halfway. I thought it was interesting. I remember actually being in the area where JFK was assassinated. And in the episode, I thought he did a good job capturing kind of the fanaticism or the how attracted people are to that part of our history here in America. Um, but the first one, he does do a piece on Dahmer. And I think our country is infatuated or does have this I don't know, this magnetic pull sometimes to when we hear about serial killers and these tragic events that take place. Same thing with Charlie Manson, Jeffrey Dahmer, uh, Ted Bundy. There's this draw to kind of see what makes some of these people tick, and a lot of times that drives the dark tourism.
Yeah, it's kind of addicting to some people of knowing what's going on through these people's heads and why they like committed these crimes. So there's like an addictive aspect to like researching like Dahmer, Manson, all those people.
Well, and my wife was a criminal justice major, and I remember she was taking a class, and we were both worried that we'd go to the library and we're checking out these books on serial killers. We're like, man, we're gonna end up with the FBI showing up at our house one day because we're checking out all these books and reading on it, on what was going on, and we were really into it. Here, Amber with another comment. Just as humanity loves to explore love, we love to explore pain. You know what? That is an excellent point. Both are universal and infinitely faceted. You know what? Thank you so much for that comment, Amber. You are 100% correct. The idea of being drawn to tragedy, as well as the idea of being drawn to love and hope. I do agree with Amber, is a big part of our humanity. It's something that there is a fine line between the two, and I love it. Whereas actually, before I go on, let me get to Sam's comment. It's weirdly romanticized too. It really is, Sam. Thank you so much for that comment. And it's just one of those things that I think even people who try to avoid thinking about it still do kind of one of these things, and they kind of open up and they're like, I don't want to know about it. Oh, wait a minute, I kind of do want to know about it. My man Larry Lease, good to see you, brother. Thank you so much for tuning in the show. 100% true, Amber. So giving Amber some love on her comments. And Kayla, what's up, Kayla? Guns up, girl. A former student from Texas Tech. Hope you're doing good. It's so good to see you on the show. She says she agrees. When the 10 Bundy series came out, I was very intrigued. Just wanted to see why he did what he did. Also, was it Zac Efron that played Bundy?
Yeah.
And at first, when I saw he was playing it, I'm not gonna lie, that's what made me want to see it. I wanted to see how good of a job he was actually gonna do playing this guy. Um, and when I was watching it, I was like, man, this is scary because at one point I almost stopped seeing, Zac Efron from High School Musical and just started seeing him as the crazy. You know what I'm saying? It
Yeah.
really changed, and I thought he did a really good job. If you haven't checked out the flick, check it out. Um, but you're right. The level of intrigue we have of trying to figure out sometimes what makes these people tick or why these dark events have taken place is something else. And Larry, thumbs up to you. Much love to you and your beautiful wife Laura and your kids always. Here we go on to the next one. The next one was the stands, and actually I really enjoyed this episode. Um, Allie, you want to give your thoughts on the episode? Favorite parts, least favorite parts?
Um, for me, this episode was more of the history of the, especially about like Kazakhstan being like the most atomic bomb placed in the world. The other one being the Russian space race, and the last place they mentioned that they every room might be like bunked in hotels and stuff, so that kind of like freaked me out
Yeah.
slightly because it's weird, especially with technology nowadays. Like everyone's listening to everything. It's
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think we even talked about that in my class where sometimes people will just talk about something random and the next thing you know, your phone is giving you 10 or 15 suggestions. So I'm waiting for Facebook and Instagram and everything to give me 50,000 vacation tips to go visit these dark tourism sites just because we talked about it tonight. When it's going to come into play, right? I have an Alexa here. I got a Google Home. So I'm waiting for all those things to come through. What intrigued me most about this episode was the wanting to swim in that lake. And
yeah.
you know what I mean? And again, uh, I just I found it interesting, and this is one of those places I might go and look and be like, oh man, it's cool. But I don't think anything would compel me to go. You know what? I think I'm going to jump in this lake that may just be so infused with nuclear radiation that it may warp me for the rest of my life. And people were doing it; they were jumping in like nothing.
Yeah, and what hit me the hardest home about this episode was both of them and the man that he was with going to a foster care house and seeing the kids who had really bad birth defects because normally over the summer I work with special need individuals with Down syndrome and our wheelchairs, has seizures, etc. And it just like broke my heart knowing that they're living in that environment. They're already like it was passed down even though they weren't born at the time. It was just really sad for me.
Hmm.
And it kind of like reminded me of some of my campers I had last summer who like absolutely changed my life.
See, and at least you're able to kind of look at it from that perspective. But it's like something we talked about before. You just really don't know what lies in the hearts of some people when they're going to visit these destinations. So moving on to the next episode, this was one of my favorites, but also at the same time, I sat there and went, "Man, this is crazy." So the Europe episode. What are your thoughts on the Europe episode?
Honestly, it was kind of cheesy to me. Not gonna lie, it was really cheesy
What did
because
you find? What did you find cheesy about it? What was the cheesiest part?
the mock war battles, like how people like I get like I understand like people like do that and like they enjoy it, but at the same time I have no amusement doing that. Then and the other segment is was about that museum that the guy had like connection to a guy who murdered someone who was
Hmm.
in jail. And it was just like I there was a few images of the in the museum that I personally took offense to, so I didn't really enjoy this episode as much as I thought I would.
Okay.
So
And it's funny, the part that you felt was the most cheesy was the part I probably enjoyed the most. Was the him participating in the World War II reenactment. Um, I don't know why I found that to be the most interesting. Maybe it's because again, when you think about the tragedies tied to World War II and everything that was going on, and just the level of reenactment. Uh,
Hmm.
I've been to Gettysburg, and I didn't get a chance to see a full reenactment at Gettysburg, but that was something that was just intriguing to me that people are recreating uh, a historical point in time, um, to give people like myself, I guess, a chance to see what it may have looked like or even felt like during those times. So for me, that was my favorite part of that episode. So is this one a medium for you, or is it a
It's
thumbs
a
up or
medium. It's a
a
medium.
medium? All right. Moving on to the next one, we have the Southeast Asia um, episode. So, what are your thoughts on this one? And if I'm not mistaken, is this the one where they gave him a chance to, was it kill a cow?
Yeah, shoot
Was
a
that
cow
this one?
with a AR-15, I believe.
Okay, that's right. Okay, okay.
Yeah, it was really cool. Like for me, being adopted from Asia to like learn about my DNA, my heritage, and my ancestors, where they came from, and just like learning more about how these pretty much these places talk about how different places in Southeast Asia live differently from everybody else.
Okay. Um, so with this one, again, this one I actually the one that the part of this episode that I found most intriguing was the idea of I think this was also the one with the mummy. If I'm not
Oh,
mistaken,
you have
this is the one.
the Indonesia one.
Was that wasn't in Indonesia, right? This one with the mummy. I found that interesting because when you think about the process and mummification and all that stuff, I'm not gonna lie. I started thinking about the movies, right, and the movies and how they do movies and mummies coming back to life and all that stuff. And I don't know why that triggered me thinking about it, but I just found that real interesting because I felt the ancient Egyptians were actually so far ahead of their time with what they were doing that I found this part to be the most interesting, and that is a place uh, that I really want to visit. I want to visit uh, Egypt. I want to get a chance to check out the pyramids
Hmm.
and see the tombs. That is something that's very interesting to me, more from a historical standpoint than just random pure infatuation with the idea.
Yeah, the thing about the Indonesia one, loved how they do a ritual of their people who have passed and how they still like really respect them even if their like bodies still on the planet and how their spirits are somewhere in space. But I really didn't like seeing all like the gore of that.
Yeah, that was a little intense. It was a little intense.
Hmm.
So the next episode was in Africa, and I think this is the one. Was it Voodoo? I think Voodoo Festival.
Yeah, it was.
So, what were your thoughts on this one right here?
Every place that they went to, South Africa, the place that they did voodoo, I don't know how to pronounce it, and like the township of Alexander was really interesting because you have the perspective of like the locals versus the tourists who were
Hmm.
going to actually see it. And it was really interesting because I loved the voodoo portion of it because you got to see like the good version of the voodoo versus the bad version of the voodoo and like the stigma that people like present when they hear the word voodoo. And I really appreciated like the different sides of voodoo, whether that be mean or harmful or nice and kind.
Okay. My mom just posted, and this is a pretty long comment. We'll see. It takes up while the screen. No, but this is cool because I remember when my mom used to travel for many of these work trips. She was in Ghana for an annual meeting back in '96, where they visit Elmina Castle. Um, oh, and one of her coworkers just was not able to stay in the area just because of what she was experiencing. Um, so she was very sensitive that night, experiencing her voyage with the people to that place. So this is one aspect that they were going. to Ghana for a meeting, a work meeting. Had a chance to take in quote unquote a dark tourism area, and it just really sparked a lot of emotion for one of my mom's coworkers. Thank you so much, Mom, for sharing that. And I know my mother had traveled to a lot of different places from that aspect. And even when you think about dark tourism, we're putting up a lot of places from all over the world. Um, the idea of there are a lot of dark tourism places here in America. When you think about Oklahoma City, a lot of people actually go to Oklahoma City to see where the building bombing took place, right? So there are a lot of things that people go. We talked about the World Trade Center, and given the current climate with the pandemic and so many people dying, you just never know how people may want to travel around the country to see where certain hotspots may have taken place in the U.S. as a result of COVID. So we might actually be witnessing the development of dark tourism here in America from a medical standpoint. So
Yeah,
that's a piece.
the elementary school bombing that happened in Oklahoma City, my family and I were there for a family reunion, I believe. And me and my cousins decided to go see it because we were really intrigued. And once we stepped on premise, everything went quiet. Like in like the premise, it was just so quiet and eerie, but a few streets away there were cars driving up and down. And we really didn't notice the noise of the cars until we left and went home and had time to think about what happened.
Wow, and that's where when somebody goes to a dark tourist destination, when it impacts them that way, and you almost can't hear anything, you just get caught up in the moment. Thank you so much for sharing that story, Alie. And the last episode of the series, they go back to the U.S. What are your thoughts on him going back to the U.S. and the topics that he discussed in that last dark tourism episode?
I didn't like this episode at all. It to me just over glorified like doomday's preppers, which I understand that people like have a fear that the world's going to end one day or there's going to be another war, like a big war. But I just didn't really like this episode. Then with the Charles Manson segment, like I didn't like the pen pal of Charles Manson when he was in jail. Then with McCamey Manor,
Is that the haunted house?
that he
Is
actually
that's
signed a
the
waiver
extreme?
for.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why people would want to put themselves through physical, emotional, and psychological torture like that because in the episode they said, yeah, every participant has to get a psychological exam, a physical exam before they can. It's just like there's no appeal to that to me. So
No, and I think it goes into that aspect of like people were saying earlier in the comments, that feeling of being alive. And you even hear some people that they do these extreme things because they've never felt more alive when they're so close to death, right? So that could also be one of those aspects that ties into it. And with you, this is one of my least favorite episodes of all of them. But this was probably my least favorite one. This is definitely kind of a halfway for me there,
it's
a
kind of
medium
a
one.
big no for me.
Really? Oh, so you're just like, nah, dump this one,
I
not feeling
know
it.
because like I don't find it amusing at all. Like I get why people are like attracted to these things and people like adrenaline junkies with the haunted manor. Like I get that's an adrenaline rush, but I don't want to be risking my life for a haunted house.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because not too long ago, my boys and I were talking about that. Just the craziness of people going to extreme haunted houses, and why would you do that? And my son was like, "Oh, that one where they pay you," and I was like, "Son, that is the craziest thing ever. Why would anybody want to do that?" And again, I think it comes to people just feeling the most alive when they're so close to
Yeah,
death. So
and And about this manor too, like I saw a post, it was either on Facebook or my Instagram, saying there was one person, he was an ex-Marine who nearly finished it, but then he either had a panic attack or had a heart attack at the very end. So he didn't make it. Like
Oh,
he didn't finish it.
yeah. See, there's no way you're not going to get me doing that. And now I'm going to put you on the spot of last question tied to the Netflix series. What was your favorite episode? So if one of the viewers or you're talking with somebody and they said, hey, I'm only going to watch one to determine whether I'm going to watch any more, what was your favorite episode? Why was it your favorite? And why should people watch it?
Honestly, out of all these episodes, Africa was probably my go-to episode
And that
because
was a good one. That was a
yeah,
good one.
because you get to learn about like different cultures that's different from yours and across the country, like super far away from you. And it's just really interesting to see how other people live and how they deal with their own stuff. And I really like, I'm a very spiritual person, so I really enjoyed the voodoo portion of it because I love learning new things about like different aspects of like different religions and voodoo and stuff like that. It's just really, it was really cool.
Yes, and I agree with you. Oh, and we do have a comment. Kayla, she put it out here. I have never heard of this show before, but I'm definitely excited to check it out. Which, as a result of her saying this, if you think about it, so if you think about the idea of dark tourism, right? Um, the aspect of morality and is it moral to be profiting from these tragic events and off of fear? Do you think that's a moral thing for these operations that make money to do?
There's like a difference for me. Say like for example, Auschwitz. They're asking people to pay to keep these intact and keep these preserved in history so we can learn from that so we don't make the same mistake that we do now that we did back then as a human race. So that's one aspect of it. And the other aspect of it is if people's making money off of, let's say, haunted houses, for example, that 99% of the people, 99.9% of the people won't make it, and you have them go through like jumping through rings to make sure that they're perfectly fine, is like kind of stupid because like why would people want to spend money just to be tortured in a sense?
And it's I guess in that aspect, if somebody wants to give their money, it's okay. But with that question, you know, sometimes this is hollow ground. It's sacred. It should be respected, and people are profiting off of it. Just to throw this up here, never heard of this show before, but I'm definitely excited to check it out now. Kayla, I'm telling you, it is definitely a must watch. I have enjoyed it.
It's so
It's
good.
one that it really is. It really is. And it popped up random on my Netflix. It's, when you watch one thing and it says because you watched, you might be interested in these shows. My mom, an emphatic yes with the exclamation point. And I just want to say hello. Thank you so much for tuning in. Glad you did. Excited to have you watching the show. Now, as we get ready to kind of wrap things up with you, Alie, what are your final thoughts on dark tourist and dark tourism?
Dark tourism is, for me, doesn't get enough credit for what it actually does in today's society because not only is it like creepy, but like it gives you like the adrenaline rush you need, but it also like preserves history that we have, and everywhere you go it preserves history. But for the show itself, I really enjoyed how each place that he went to had its own unique dark tourist thing. Like in the US, there's like different things in different cities that you can go check out, while in other countries, there's cities that are like made a living, not like a true living, but surrounded itself in supporting the dark tourist industry. So I think that's really cool.
Well, cool. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Thank you so much for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, Alie Miller, thank you again. Looking forward to having you back on the show again, hopefully in the future where we maybe could expand on this conversation and talk a little bit more.
Yeah,
But again, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
I will. And I will see you in class
See
tomorrow.
you in class tomorrow, right? I know. Good night, Alie. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, that pretty much wraps up. Next week, we are going to have a conversation revolving around going back to school. So, I am about to start classes, and there are many individuals who have been involved in classes. So, next week on September 1st at 9 p.m., we're going to have a discussion. We are back to school. What's going on with you and your schools in your area? And I'm looking at this and not necessarily a bashing attempt, but I just kind of want to find out what's going on. And just a couple of quick things. Amber, big shout out to Alie. She said, "You did great, Alie." We have my brother Damien. I tell you what, I love where your head's at. You're kind of like I am, always looking at the business perspective. Is dark tourism a higher margin business? Even if top line revenue is smaller, is it more profitable? So I haven't looked specifically at the numbers, but I will tell you this. I feel a lot of times that the profit margins are bigger when it comes to the dark tourism aspect, because when you look at the infrastructure, a lot of times the infrastructure is already in place. So they're not having to spend on building up infrastructure. It's already there. Sometimes there's some slight adjustments, but they're not having to pour a lot of money up front to develop these things or even develop the stories. It already exists. It is already in place. So I think a lot of times that the profit margin is there. So there's one of the episodes, Damien, where they do the Dahmer tour, and really the individual is collecting money, going to a bar that already has set up shop. They get to set up in the corner, collect money, start talking about it. Then they just go on a walk in the street. Well, the street in Milwaukee is already set up. The bar where Dahmer went to hunt his victims, it's already there. The people are just walking up and down the street. So there's no real cost that is being driven into it. If people want to get drinks before they go, they have to cash bar. They pay for their own. It's not something being provided by the tour operator. So the profit margin, I believe, is there. And I feel a lot of times easy money. I feel it's an easy money thing for people to be involved with. My mom mentioned she had a great time. And Sam, thank you so much for the kind words. She says she can't wait for next week. Love this episode tonight. Thank you so much for joining. And again, getting back, we're just going to be talking about what's going on. There's so much stuff going on. And again, as I mentioned, we're not looking at necessarily bashing. There's just been a lot of activity going on. An institution I used to work at was open for a couple of weeks and already has had to shut down because of COVID clusters on campus. So there are a lot of things going on. A lot of people are nervous, not sure how this is all going to play out. So I put a call out for panelists. I still have space for a couple of panelists. If anybody is interested, please leave your name in the comments if you want to do it. If you want to go ahead and be a part of the discussion, you could also email me at rollthedicewithdave@gmail.com. But the 4 panelists I'm going to have, one is my beautiful daughter out in West Texas A&M University. Just dropped her off this past week, last week. So she's been there about a week. She started classes and she's excited to be there. But again, there's still that concern about what's going on with COVID. A young man that I have known for a long period of time from my days at East Carolina University. My man Murph just replied, "Count me in." You are definitely in, my brother. You will be panelist number 5. Looking forward to having you on the show. Brad was a young man who attended a camp that I was one of the counselors at when I was a faculty member at ECU. Looking forward to having Brad on the show. Tara Stevenson, the Dean of Student Development and Career Development Center at Flagler College, is going to be one of the panelists. And I'm really excited about this last panelist that responded to me, Wayne Riggs. He's the Dean of the Flagler College Tallahassee campus. I've had a chance to interact with him on a couple of occasions, and I'm really excited to hear his thoughts and comments for getting the Tallahassee campus ready. I just think his insight on not just this topic, but on all the topics he discusses is just great and amazing. I'm looking forward to having you on the show, Dean Riggs. Thank you so much. And the last little comment before we sign off, some friends from Greenville. Carrie, thank you so much for turning in. She says she loved the discussion. Definitely going to watch this series on Netflix. Check it out. I'm telling you, you are going to enjoy it. So before I go, I just want to thank everybody again for tuning in. Please make sure you hashtag Roll the Dice with Dave, like and share with your friends. This is a platform where we're going to talk about anything, and let's be open and honest about it. And let's continue to be the change that we want to see in this world. Much love to you all, and I hope everybody has a great night.